Good afternoon. I hope you're all having a good Patriots Day today. Today's September 11th, 2016. Today I'm going to talk about tithing. It's a question I asked on Facebook, what people wanted to hear something about. There's a lot of contention over tithing and an even broader eye-raising position on what is referred to as seeding. That's something I'm going to talk about in another sermon. They are both of great concern to Christianity, not because of the funding aspect, but because of the way the principles disenfranchise people and tear apart churches. A tithe means 10%. In Leviticus, it was established that 11 of the 12 tribes would tithe. Meaning giving 10% of all of their belongings, all of their harvest, all of their wealth to the one tribe, which is the Levites. The Levites are the servants of the clergy, and then the Levites would then give 10% of whatever they received to the clergy for the running of the churches and the ministries. It really takes no degree of imagination to see how this process could be corrupted, even with the premise that the giving is supposed to be done freely, cheerfully, and with hearts and minds fixed on God. One thing we need to be clear about is that Jesus was executed per prophecy, but that wasn't the reason why he was executed. He was executed because he spoke out against the processes and the rituals of tithing, the way it was being done and the way the funds are being used. In fact, that was the fundamental basis for any mention he ever actually made about tithing. Although many may say that it's because people like to keep their clutches on their hard-earned dollar, or that wanting to be in possession of what they earned is actually a love of money, which is called the root of all evil in 1 Timothy 6:10. I think it is covered by the fact that Christians don't tend to disagree over less important parts of the Bible, those not directly associated with the commandments, or their disagreements come from some very poorly conveyed context. Picking and choosing scriptures that can easily be taken out of context. Such is the case for most, if not all, biblical controversy. Without the proper context, the meaning is easily adulterated. Now, I have seen firsthand how freely giving has brought blessings upon myself and my family, even at a time when giving anything seemed reckless or oblivious to the fact that I wasn't able to pay my bills. But many church leaders erroneously deliver that message with the contrived gospel of wealth, making it seem as if giving to the church isn't just an obligation, but it's an investment that will reap the rewards a week later or at some point after you're hanging out in heaven in pearly gates. Far too many church leaders deliver this message on the premise and with the assumption that what you have to give, your actual value, is a monetary one that comes from your wallet. That's the point where we need to shake things up. That's where we need to put our foot down and say enough. That's where the system of tithing and the purpose of it falls apart. And it's not because churches don't need revenue. It's quite the contrary. It's because the message is being delivered so poorly that we forget what true value and wealth is. And we disregard the fact that some of the greatest wealth and values can be had by people with pure hearts but empty bank accounts. The collection plate. Felt bags, buckets, cups, boxes, actual plates. And it's being seen depositing something. And in that vessel, we are expected to deposit checks and cash and envelopes. Sometimes it probably isn't even 10% of your gross income skimmed off the top. But if it is, are you giving freely with your heart? And if it's truly a tithe, does it also include vegetables, spices from your garden, some of that venison that you got last fall, 10% of the prom dress that your mother sewed together for your sister? Maybe it's actually nothing. Maybe it's an empty envelope that you deposit. I've done it before myself. So that you can save yourself the embarrassment. It's just an embarrassment between you and God, but it's to be seen giving something. It's really of no value at all. Maybe upon opening the envelope, the treasurer says, "Oh, what a blessing we have received." Or maybe they look at it and say, "Well, that certainly isn't going to pay the bills this week." Maybe your church has you raise that envelope or that cash up in the air, and they do a prayer while you're doing your offering. I've been in a church that did that as well. I was pretty uncomfortable with it. Perhaps in a place like that, your wealth is your value, and it can be summed up in what you're about to put in the plate. And then someone will always say, "Oh, but Christian churches don't do that. In fact, our church is explicit in letting you know that you are welcome to attend the event, even if you have no blessings to share." And I've heard that as well from pastors. But where is the sermon about true worth and value to God? The sermon that explains that here in this virtual war zone, that we're here to create this landing zone for God's arrival, using every blessings that He has already given us. I haven't heard that sermon yet. The first inclination from most established churches would be to see this attack on tithing and say, "Well, then how can we turn on the lights? How can we have this congregation here in the air conditioning? How can we even provide a service without tithing?" And those questions only come from leaders and congregations of very little faith. Those leaders would ask you to shave off the first 10% for the collection plate with the heart and the faith that you're doing it nobly and justly and for God. But those same leaders are unwilling to acknowledge that their cash collection rituals have become so important that it totally covers over anything else the church is actually doing. One of the churches that I've actually liked going to the most, they have the altar, the area behind the where the pastor is standing and giving his bit. It's basically a giant gold-wrapped bowl, maybe a giant planter that you would use to plant a ficus tree, and that's where they consider the altar. So you go up for your communion each week, and just before you take communion, you drop your offering at the altar in this large ficus planter. But God's altar is not at the front of the room. It's not behind where the pastor is. It's not beside where the pastor is. It's on the street. It's in the neighborhood. It's in the places where people are hungering and hurting and trying to survive. It is in these tithing rituals where Christians have become no different than anyone else in the world. We are horrible at being able to see what blessings are and how to convey these concepts to our congregants. I'm here to tell you that shining this light, this truth on your congregation is not a task that they're going to readily accept. This is something you need to pray on after stepping away from the ritual, after rejecting the fact that nothing seems to change for the better, because we're not doing anything different than we've done for the past 3,000 years. The real takeaway from this is that we need to be explicit in highlighting the fact that the poorest individual was created to be worth more than the most bountiful of tithes. The ancient Jews created a system of processes for quantifying worth by counting wealth. Jesus came to tell the truth, creating a division between fact and lies. If we continue to place more value on the tithing process than we do on the values of the lives that He created, we will continue to look at the bottom of an empty collection bucket and wonder, how are we ever going to change anything? It certainly looks like we have a lot of work to do. I'm Pastor B. Have a great week. I'm out.
You are love.